Okay, welcome, Serena. Thanks for coming on. We're really excited to have you. I want to start off with the basics so we can kind of get a sense of who you are right now. So, how old are you? Where are you? Where are you living? And what are you doing?
For sure. So, my name's Serena. I live in New York City. I'm 28 years old and I work in advertising.
Cool. So, thank you for coming on. That's a perfect little description. So, we brought you on here because you're involved in Generation SOS, and which means you have some sort of tie to this mission of this organization, as we all do. So, can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Generation SOS and what your personal relationship with substances and mental health is?
For sure. So I met Robin, who is one of the founders of Generation SOS, probably about a year and a half ago now, or maybe even 2 years ago at this point. And she immediately said I needed to get involved with Generation SOS. Personally, for my entire life, like my mom has raised me with the belief that to those who much is given, much is expected. And so I've always had that mentality of wanting to give back in service, and no matter like any way that I possibly can. And so I met Robin right around when I kind of was starting my sobriety journey. I had my last drink at 25 years old, and then met Robin, I think probably like that October. So it was like May to October. I met her. It was a couple months in. And the mission really stuck out to me. I've had a lot of friends who struggled even more than I have with drugs and alcohol. And especially in high school, it was such a big thing in my social circles. I know a couple people who died when we were in high school and college, and I actually have a very close friend who passed away last week from an overdose.
I'm so
So
sorry.
yeah, it's been a tough week, for sure. But I think it almost just ingrained more in me the importance of pushing this mission of Generation SOS, just so that more people are aware of the many, many faces of what addiction looks like, because it isn't just being like, the homeless person under a bridge. They say Park Avenue to Park Bench, addiction affects every single person, either directly or indirectly. And so, yeah, Robin and the whole team of Generation SOS, just their grit, their determination really stuck out to me. And so I've really enjoyed being able to be involved with them for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. And again, I completely hate to hear about your friend's passing. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. I know it was very recently. Additionally, kind of backtracking. So, what made you decide you wanted to become sober?
Yeah, we'll go to the beginning. Uh, so
Start from the top.
yeah, at around 12 years old, a doctor told me and my mom that I had an addictive personality. And I had been diagnosed with all these food allergies. I just felt so different than everyone else. I was so just like, why can't I be like everyone else? Like pity me, pity me. And that really became the narrative for me from 12 to like 25 years old. And the doctor then told me that, hey, Serena, like you should just obviously avoid drugs, because like, DARE was such a big thing at the time. This is like, the early 2000s. And they would all come to school, tell us like, don't do drugs, you do drugs, you die. And like, I almost felt like in those moments, I was like, of course I'll never do drugs. But then I was also like, well, that kind of sounds nice. Like, I feel really uncomfortable. I started having suicidal ideation at like 14 years old. Like, I didn't see my life going in directions that would ever make like my parents happy, whatever. I just thought to myself, like, I'll never become president and I don't have any reason to live. Like, it was like, I'm never going to be the top of the world, so therefore I have no reason to live. And that's just like how my mind operated for a lot of years. And so when I started learning about drugs when I got to boarding school, Adderall is such a common thing in the education system. And, because I have this addictive personality, I was like scared to ever even try to get prescribed it. But in high school, I actually started stealing it from people. Like, I'd go into people's dorm rooms and like know where they had their bottle, and I'd just take one. And I can remember finding a whole prescription bottle in like a study room at my high school, and I was like, I've hit the jackpot. And it had this guy's name on it, and I took like half the bottle and then I returned it to him, and like we never talked about it. So yeah, I started misusing Adderall because, you know, I didn't think that I was enough. I never thought that I was like very middle of the pack. I wasn't straight A's. I was like solid B student without putting too much work in. Like, you know, I always just got by. And so from there in high school, there was like no drinking allowed at our high school. It was a really small boarding school in Delaware. And so when I got to college, and alcohol was just like everywhere. Oh wait, let me backtrack a little bit. My senior year of high school, I was determined to try to walk onto a tennis team wherever I went to college. And so senior year, I totally changed my diet. I started actually doing yoga. I started researching Buddhism. I was like researching all this stuff because I was just like, I want to be the best. And like, I was trying to learn like, how do these people do it who are the best in the world? It's like Djokovic changed his diet, scaled to number 1. I was like, I'm gonna be just like him. So senior year, I mean, I overdid it because I was doing this completely in self-will. I went down to 92 pounds at 5'8". I was just skin and bones and muscle. And, you know, I was so uncomfortable on the inside. Like, I look back at those times and it was just, I really have a lot of sympathy for my teenage self because she was so uncomfortable and she thought that she was the only one that felt this way. And so when I got to high school when I got to college and I did make the tennis team and everything, alcohol was just so ready. And like, I wasn't drinking in high school that much. Like, I remember like wanting to, but like, I just never really did it because it was like off limits. But when I got to college, it was everywhere and it was totally allowed. I studied abroad my freshman year at 18 years old in Singapore. And in Singapore, the drinking age was 18. And I started browning out in Singapore very quickly. And so, you know, my drinking career escalated very quickly. And when I got back to college sophomore year, you know, the blackouts really started. I had my first blackout and I was shook. And I was just like, I'm never drinking again. A week later, I blacked out again. And then it just became a norm. It was like that bar that I always had for myself was just constantly shifting. And so in college, drinking just became like, it was a funny thing. Everyone talked about like, oh, I got so blacked out last night. Like, oh, you want to go black out together? Like, it was like so normal to black out drinking. And so as the blackouts continued, I also sought, you know, relief in other measures because I was so uncomfortable drinking so much. And the drinking was causing me to be so much more depressed and like not able to show up for life and not able to show up for school. I think back to like, I've always been a people person. I've always loved connecting with people. And so I like formed these really solid connections with all my professors to the point that I'm pretty sure all my professors didn't fail me because they're like, well, she's a really good person. Like, it totally enabled me because like, there was no way. I think I actually failed probably out of 2 or 3 classes and like somehow managed to C. So anyway, yeah, like kind of like manipulated my way into the grades, manipulated my way around campus. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Good. Take your time.
You know, as that bar kept shifting, that bar kept getting higher and higher. Like, you know, as a kid, they told us don't do cocaine, don't do hard drugs. Suddenly cocaine was kind of like appearing on campus. And it was like, don't try LSD, don't do Molly, don't do ecstasy, like you're gonna die. It was like, well, maybe if I just go to a concert and I research all the vitamins I have to take around taking these drugs so my brain isn't totally messed up, I can better prepare myself to go take these drugs and actually like it'll work out really well. And you know, that worked for like maybe 3 concerts and then my body needed more. And my body, that bar kept going higher and higher to the point that I couldn't go out on a night with friends my senior year without cocaine or without the promise of like a deeper, harder drug because alcohol wasn't cutting it anymore. Alcohol was making me black out. And when I blacked out, I was usually taken advantage of by some frat guy at my college. And waking up with that shame every day, also like peeing the bed all the time. Like there was so much shame wrapped up in my life in college that I just thought I was like either the only one or everyone felt the same way. And I didn't know how to speak up. You know, at the time I didn't have the vocabulary to even say what I was feeling. I didn't know that when I was waking up, I was feeling shame and guilt and like, you know, this loss of dignity. I didn't know how to articulate myself. So I continued to act out and act out. And it was college though, like it was kind of normal. Like people just did it. We were all doing our best and nobody really had the tools, it felt. But my senior year, shortly after my 21st birthday, one of my best friends, my only friend really in college, she said to me, she's like, Serena, I think you have a drinking problem. Like you become a different person when you drink and it's really hard to watch. And I started looking up like, how do I get help? Where are the resources here? And so I looked up meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I looked into therapy. And, you know, I thought that those meetings for people with addiction issues, like I thought those were only for people who were like under the bridge homeless. So I didn't go. I tried to find a therapist. I tried to go to church. I tried doing all these things. And, you know, by the end of my senior year, my college basketball team won the national championship. Everyone was having fun partying. And I was at a point where I was like kind of controlling my drinking on my own. And so I thought I'd be okay. Fast forward, I moved to New York. First Tuesday night in New York City, I picked up cocaine and I was basically just like randomly dabbling in that for the next like 4 years. The physical consequences started to get greater. I started having worse headaches. My face was bloated. And I started overcompensating with exercise, with like eating totally vegan, with doing juice cleanses, like the elements of how unmanageable my life were in the first 4 years I lived in New York City. I mean, I just look back in and I'm like, how did I actually like survive? Because, you know, the blackouts did continue, and like the blackouts in those first 4 years, they weren't me waking up in some frat guy's bed. It was like me waking up in Harlem and having no idea how I got there. And so summer of 2018, or the winter of 2018, I started to get really, really dark. My depression started getting worse. I started self-harming in other ways. I was like binging, restricting with food, with shopping. My credit card debt mounted like crazy. And like I've been very blessed in terms of like my upbringing and like how my parents raised me and everything. And I was so ashamed of how much money I was spending, and it was just out of control. And I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to like put my hand up at work and say, hey, like I deserve to be paid more than $40,000 a year. I was severely underpaid in my job for the amount of work that I was putting in. And so winter 2018, it was pretty dark. I was really depressed. I tried to go get help, tried to go to a therapist. But it was like I was seeking that like one-stop shop where like I'd show up to one time at a therapist and they'd be like, you're better. That's not how it works. And so summer 2018, the blackouts kind of continued, the drinking continued, the party kept going. My life started getting really big. I was like on these like yachts places, and I was like, you know, just doing all this like really fun party stuff. And the Labor Day of 2018, the Tuesday after, my mom called me and she goes, Serena, your aunt or someone called who called your aunt, who called your cousin to call me to tell me that if you don't stop drinking, you are going to kill yourself or kill someone else. And that right then was like the biggest wake-up call, because I knew that I had all these consequences happening suddenly, like physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, you know, you name it, everything was just like out of alignment. And so that fall of 2018, I started listening to recovery podcasts, just like this podcast that you guys are putting out, mostly geared toward older people. Like it was like probably people in their 50s that I was listening to for a couple months. And I listened to it every day on the way to work. And it like, you know, I listened for the similarities, I discarded the differences, and it brought me so much joy to listen to these podcasts every day. But it was like my greatest hidden secret, because all my friends, everyone I knew that I was like hanging out with, like they drank in the same way that I did, or so I thought. And so I kept surrounding myself with the same people, and that meant that I kept staying sick, and I kept staying in that orbit of basically making drugs and alcohol like my higher power. Like I was just so excited for the weekend. I became this weekend warrior. I got a job at a tech company. I was like, on the outside, everything was looking really, really good in this fall 2018 era. But I was just so depressed, and still drinking so much. And so, I tried a lot of things in about 2 years. I tried going to church. I tried new churches. I tried finding boys. I tried to find boys that would fix me. I dated a boy because he didn't drink for a moment. I kept looking for externals for about 2 years to fix what was such an internal problem. And by the pandemic in May of 2020, I had my last blackout. It was very public, and I reached out to a girlfriend of mine who had 2 years sobriety. She'd actually left New York very abruptly in spring of 2018. And I remember when she did that, I was like, what's she doing? Like, I wanted to follow her. It was like, what? Like, that feels like where I'm supposed to be going. And instead I was like going to, the nightclubs with she was leaving. And so I turned to her and I was just like, how do you do this? Like, I think I'm done. And she was like, oh yeah, I heard about your Saturday night. And I was like, how did you hear about it? You weren't there. And she's like, everyone heard about it, Serena. So yeah, and immediately I just, I stuck myself with her. I got really close to her. I kept close to some other women that she introduced me to. And, my life got better one day at a time. I learned what one day at a time means. And I started working a program of recovery that led me to some of the most incredible people I've met in my entire life. People who's, I was joking with a friend last night who came with me to a non-sober friend's birthday party, and he's sober a couple more years than I am. And I was like, yeah, like I didn't go to hell and get out of hell to be unhappy. Like, one day at a time, so long as I'm putting in this work every day and surrounding myself with people who, are in a similar plane and who want to grow along these spiritual lines and want to grow in these personal, goals and everything. Life is so good. I was just walking home from meeting with someone that I've met through sobriety who has like this incredible job, and like, was telling me his whole career story. And like, I hear it, like, there's just so much gratitude in this world. And like, it's like, no matter who you are, I no longer am scared of people. I was terrified of other people. I was terrified of like, I'm going to say something and they're going to misconstrue it, and then my life will be over. Mm-hmm. It's like, I have faith in a higher power, something bigger than myself. And it's not one conventional religion. It's a higher power that's come of my own understanding. And, through that higher power, I have the faith that like what I'm doing today is just a part of a bigger plan. And like, I'm not the conductor of this train. I'm on this little treadmill that's actually on this bigger train. And no matter how fast I run on this treadmill on the train and like try to control the elevation and whatnot, like, it's not going to change how fast the train gets me to the destination. And so, yeah, that was a lot, but my life's gotten really good.
I love that analogy. That's a great analogy. Very applicable.
Yeah.
All of us, these fast-paced lives. I'm wondering, I'm from New York City. I'm curious about the role that New York played in those first 4 years, the culture of New York, the scene, the wealth, the drinking culture. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I first got to New York is the easiest place in the world to get drunk and the easiest place to get sober. There are so many people in the city, and it really is a product of who you surround yourself with. That first Tuesday night that I talked about, that I had my first day of work, and then I went and picked up drugs and was out till 4 a.m. Like, I could have easily met up with a friend who was like, living like a really solid, accountable life, and, wanted to play checkers and go to bed.
Right.
I think though, for those first 4 years, I struggled with the idea of sobriety, because I was that person that was like, anything can be a drinking event. Like, we watch football on Sunday and you get drinks, and you like grab coffee with a friend and suddenly you're at like a boozy ice cream store. Like, the options are limitless. but the options are only limitless if that's what you're focusing on. The options are limitless in the other direction if that's what you're also focusing on too. So
absolutely. That makes so much sense to me. I love that phrase, that it's the easiest place to get drunk and sober. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, by the way. Like, that was the most vulnerable, in-depth portrayal of your entire story. And that's going to be so helpful to so many people. I resonate in a million ways, especially being in college and knowing that that is just normal. Like, I can imagine a friend going through a similar thing, and I don't know that I'd notice it until senior year. So what would you say to students in college now who are participating in that culture where it's like super normal to black out and laugh about it the next day? You know, like, how do we change that?
I would say that you cannot change it. What you can change is what you do in relation to it and how you react to it. In college, I had a couple of friends who weren't blacking out, and you know, their example for me still sticks in my head to the day. And you know, they're now crazy in banks and top, you know, they're top high overachiever performers, and like, you know, their example for me was actually like, you know what, I want to be just like them. Like, maybe I should go like talk to them and see what they're doing. And I think looking back at that time, like, I needed that one friend to tell me, Serena, like, you don't have to drink like this. Like, I get it. And she knows, she was like, I understand everyone else is doing it, but like, you don't have to, because I care about you. And so, you know, that summer 2019, I didn't really get into this, but pretty much every other weekend, it was like, I'm not going to drink this weekend. Friends would show up, we'd not drink, we'd have a great weekend. The next weekend I go out without those friends, and I go black out and then be like, oh, why did I do that? But then it was like, you know, as I slowly grew more of this community of people that said that I didn't have to black out, my addict brain was able to be like, okay, like, maybe I can change the way that I think about this because I have this community. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is community. And so surrounding those people that you see in college who, like, you know, might really be struggling with whatever substance or whatever, like, eating disorder or whatever you like, you feel like they could be struggling with, like, just surrounding them with love. I think, you know, there's two things that are unconditional in this world. There's unconditional love and there's unconditional surrender. Like, I am not the conductor and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I have to humble myself to know that every single day. And in humbling myself, that's where I start to feel that unconditional love. And like, I don't think that I ever would have gotten to this point that I know those two things about my life and about this world if I wasn't surrounded by people who showed me that there is love in this world and that I could form a community of really strong people that I really, really identify with and relate to. And, you know, in that, I definitely had to raise my hand though too, eventually. But, you know, that wasn't in the control of anyone else around me. So if you're wondering what to do, I think it's just show up for people and know and show them that, like, unconditional love is a thing and that they don't have to have all the answers.
And that community that you're referring to, that is the opposite of addiction, are most of the people you're surrounded by sober? Do some of them still drink? And like, how is that?
So I would say my life is really big. The idea of not surrounding myself with people who drink and like only people who are sober, it just like never was gonna fly. And you know, people, they say like, you go to the barbershop enough, you're gonna get a haircut. Like, I never wanted to let go of being a 20-year-old and going to bars with friends. And so I think that what's been important for me is keeping my social circles like very clear. I do this like kind of funny exercise where I make like an inner circle, and that's like my core people that like, that's my community, that's my tribe. And those are the people that like help me, I help them, we lift each other up. You know, there is that unconditional love aspect to them. And then I draw a second circle, and that's the people who like, they might be newer in my life, or they might just not be on that inner circle level. And it's like, it's very intuitive as I'm thinking about people, like where they lie, as I'm writing their names on this piece of paper. And there's an outer circle, and that's like people who I want to nurture, people who I've probably recently met or haven't been connected to in a while, reconnected with, and I just want to go nurture those people. And then on the rest of the paper is the space. And the space is where I put those people that are not helping me and I don't know how to help them.
Mm.
That like idea of community and connection is not as strong with them. And for me, like, I'm just such a visual person. Like, I need to see it visually like that in order for me to like kind of like, you know, walk around during the day and like have an idea of what I want to do and who I want to see and who I want to grab lunch with.
Oh, but that keeps you very on task about, you know, your values and who you want to surround yourself. So I think that's amazing. And that's a very good idea. I might have to do that as well. And another question I do have is, so how was it the first few weeks, month, 6 months being sober for you?
Funny. So for me,
Does it get easier? Do you, you know?
So the first night, my first real 90 days, it was the summer. So my last drink was on Memorial Day. So the first 90 days was basically till Labor Day. And for me, summers were a time of free for all, like reckless behavior. And so that summer, I just stayed really close to the people that I would consider that inner circle. And I distanced myself from the people that I would put on the like blank page. I think that was probably one of the most important things that I've ever done. And then I started bringing people into my life that I met through that inner circle who had what I wanted, and like consciously just said, sorry, I'm really busy right now. And we were in a pandemic. So like I could actually just say, sorry, worried about COVID.
Totally.
Yeah. And so, you know, something that I've learned too in my sobriety is that like no is a full answer. Like you can just say no to someone and be like, sorry, I don't have time right now. And like, you know, if those relationships fall apart, that's okay. Because like, I know where they stand in my life. And I know that like, you know, in that first 90 days, it was really hard for me to let go of some of those relationships, but the people who I was trying to nurture and the people that were in that inner circle were making it really easy for me to see that I did need to let go of some of those relationships.
Yeah, it sounds like what was key to your sobriety was really being super intentional and blunt about what you needed out of your relationships.
Yeah.
Is something I think we all can benefit from, because it's easy to want to be social and well liked and just have a good impression on everyone and form those connections with whoever will listen. That's really not productive in the long run, especially in a time that you really need like that unconditional love. You can't get that from random people. So yeah, that's
I was going to say, you could still definitely try to find it. And I'm not going to say that I didn't try to find it during those first 90 days, but, you know, having that really strong community behind me that I really purposely kind of built for myself. And, you know, I took the suggestions of other people who'd done it before me really clearly and closely. At that time, it was, you know, my first 90 days was definitely a very humbling experience. I had to admit that I didn't know how to live without drugs and alcohol. And cause like, you know, dating, especially like being in your 20s, you want to go and date, have fun, find the love of your life, everything. And like for that first year, I had to date myself. I went on some like pretty bad dates because I actually still had no idea who I was. Like I had to spend that first full year putting in the conscious work and the conscious effort of, you know, a program of recovery in order to, at the end of that year, come out and be like, oh, wait, you know what? Like, I actually really don't like that person because of these values or this stuff. Like, you know, I had that idea, I think, Jackie, that you just mentioned, of like wanting to be like loved by everyone and like wanting to love everyone. And like what I got out of that year of dating myself was that I actually don't have to love everyone, but I can show love to everyone.
mm-hmm.
There's a difference in that.
Definitely. So, I mean, with that advice is huge, I think, to end on. But if you have anything else you want to kind of like touch on about your experience, what you've learned, what you're still struggling with, we'd love to hear like any final thoughts that you have.
Yeah. No, I would just say that most of my life, like, I think I've probably said the word grateful. I hope I've said the word grateful in this talk like a million times. Because there's this great quote, a grateful drunk never gets drunk again. And so, you know, I have to be grateful every single day of my life and not take it for granted that, you know, I am an alcoholic, I am an addict, and like my natural state is to rely on externals in order to feel better. But so long as I do this work and I surround myself with a community of people who are like-minded, you know, I'm not seeking something external to myself. I'm actually fully aware and connected to, you know, a power greater than myself. They say that like addiction is not, you know, I forget what it is, but you know, they say that addiction is a spiritual disease. And for me, I always had a God-sized hole because I thought that I was God or I was absolutely nothing. And I couldn't, you know, I couldn't live in that like middle ground. I had to know the answer, and it's either a yes or a no. And you know, what sobriety has given me is the ability to live in that gray zone, live in that like both and space. And know that my greatest act of humility today is to say that I actually don't know everything. And that act of humility is actually what I think gives me the most freedom to live a really big life devoted to service of like my fellows around me. And like I feel like this is like a lot. And like who knows if it's relatable, but
yes.
I think at the
For
end
sure.
I think at the end of the day, if you're questioning if you have an issue with drinking or with drugs or, you know, reliance on something, over shopping, over gambling, over, you know, doing stuff to these extents of addiction, there are so many resources out there for you. You just have to Google. You just have to type, and you just have to reach out, and you just have to show up. My dad has always told me the recipe for success in life is showing up. And, you know, when I was stuck in those diseases and in like that dis-ease in myself, that discomfort, I couldn't show up for myself, let alone absolutely anything else. And so like, I would just urge anyone who like, you know, is listening and everything, like just show up for yourself, do the Google search, pick up the phone, call someone. If you're at all questioning that you might have like an unhealthy relationship with something, like there are resources out there, and there are entire communities for you to talk to and connect with, who like thousands and millions of people have been through the exact same experience and they've gotten out of it, and there is a solution to it.
Thank you. That's all. And the hardest part sometimes is showing up, and the rest is just that community and helping you through that. So thank you for adding that amazing point. Also, I'm so grateful for you coming on. I'm grateful that you went through everything that you did, because now you've grown, you have learned, you are so confident and so well spoken. Serena, thank you so much for coming on. But also, now that you have gone through all of that and grown, you can give yourself to others and help others, and unconditionally, right? Like you said. So thank you. I mean, just so much. I cannot say anymore. Thank you, really.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I'm honored to be interviewed for my experience here.
Yeah, this is going to help so many people. I think your story is incredibly powerful and really inspirational. So thank you. And we will be in touch.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. If you need anything, we are here. We'd love to do a follow-up episode with you as well in a little bit to check in and see how you're doing. And are you going to the side note? Are you going to the meeting on Sunday for SOS? The virtual?
Potentially. My parents are around. But yeah, my sobriety date is actually on October 22nd. So
congratulations. I'll send you a text on that day for sure. Well, thank you again. Have a wonderful Friday weekend. Be safe. And thank you again, truly, Serena.
Yeah, we'll send you this episode before it gets released, and just look out for that email. Like, you can listen to it, give us the go ahead, make sure like everything sounds good to you. And if not, like, we're the ones editing, so we can always take stuff out. But yeah, look out for that. Thank you. And have the best day.
Thanks. You too, guys.
Thank you so much, Serena. Bye.
Bye.